There was no plan B for this well-known Hollywood director. He could only hope for the best, because if the worst happens, the movie is over. It's the last scene, and a thunderstorm and torrential rains is predicted to hit the salt flats where the land speed record on a motorbike is about to be filmed.
I knew I couldn't go back.
You just put it out there.
She said you've got less than a year to live.
Just dug even
Luck
deeper.
is the residue of design.
Nobody else was doing it, so I couldn't.
That was the turning point.
Hi, I'm Phil Keoghan. Welcome to the BUCKiT podcast, where I talk to mavericks, innovators, and disruptors. People who take chances. Those who swerve off the predictable road, face their fears, and refuse to say no. Amazingly resilient people who are motivated and tenacious. Those who have said buck it and who epitomize what it means to tick it before you kick it. You'll know his movies: 13 Days, Cocktail, No Way Out, The Bounty, Species, Dante's Peak, The Recruit, and The World's Fastest Indian. Roger Donaldson's success as a director derives from a unique combination of tenacity, hard work, serendipity, loveable cheekiness, ability to problem solve, a love of storytelling, and fast cars. Roger's been behind groundbreaking films for more than 35 years, and it's his love of New Zealand that really kick-started his directing career, a place that continues to draw this director to the bottom of the world, to tell stories about unlikely heroes and local legends like Burt Munroe, a motorcycling world land speed record holder depicted in The World's Fastest Indian and starring Sir Anthony Hopkins, a critically acclaimed movie adored all over the world that almost never made it into movie theaters. Sweetness. Well, first of all, cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for coming in. And it's very early in the morning here in Los Angeles. And
But
I'm
it's
sorry.
9 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, it is. And I'm sorry I don't have champagne glasses, but
Oh,
this
well.
is the expensive stuff. I didn't skim
No,
on
that's
the...
why. That's a bit early in the morning, Phil, but I appreciate it, and you'll get the truth out of me now.
Yeah, absolutely. Get the
An old
truth.
trick.
The truth serum. So
To
cheers
the truth.
to you, mate. To the truth. Wherever it may lie.
Wherever it may be.
Yes.
Maybe we dig it up.
And it's good. It's the French stuff. I mean, I'm telling you, it's not
No, it tastes like French stuff.
the El Cheapo stuff.
No, you wouldn't do cheapo stuff on
Wouldn't
us.
go for that. Roger, I started your story with talking about the day that you were faced with a impending storm that was about to roll in, and you've got all these people out shooting a movie and the pressures of all of that, and you're in charge and calling the shots, literally. And I just wonder if you could take us back to that moment and what that was like.
This was the last day at the Bonneville Salt Flats. We had hundreds of vehicles. We had hundreds of people. And it had to get done. We were checking out, I believe, to fly to New Zealand. So everything had to get done. And the weather was starting to deteriorate and deteriorate. Somehow it held off until the very end. But that night, torrential rain came in, covered the salt flats with about 6 inches of water. Our set that we'd built was over 30 miles, spread over 30 miles. It took weeks to find all the bits and get them off the salt flats. I mean, it was incredibly lucky.
Wow. But what is it like for somebody who's in charge of all of that? Like, you've got to make the decision to go for it. Do you like that?
Part of being the director is being the decision maker and being the one that does call the shots and says, what we're going to do. But you don't do it on your own either, So you need an amazingly competent group of people behind you, around you, in front of you, over the top of you, under you, who are just as dedicated as you are to making it all happen. I mean, everything sort of went according to plan.
Amazing.
I just got to say go.
Yeah, well, sort of. But I mean, it's all on you, because if you don't get it, then
No,
they
true.
point the finger back
Yeah,
at
yeah.
you, right? And
I don't know what would have happened if we didn't get it, by the way.
Really? How many times in your career do you think you've been in that situation where it's been that?
I don't think many times I've ever been sort of on the knife edge like that, where if the weather had come in a day earlier, I honestly don't know what would have happened.
And it would have just completely blown up the budget, right?
Well, the budget was on its, every movie, but an independent movie is always like clinging on by its fingernails.
Yeah.
And we were clinging on by our fingernails.
And you got Anthony Hopkins. I mean, you don't want to leave a guy like that hanging around
No.
and saying, I'm sorry, Anthony, but you have to wait another week. Well,
Another week and you're going to do it for nothing.
yeah.
No.
I'm sorry, we've run out of money, and
No, you don't want to have to
we just
say
have to gather all the stuff from 30-mile radius and pull
Yes,
it back
yeah.
together. Well, I have to say, I've said it to you many times before, The World's Fastest Indian, which is about a New Zealand gentleman by the name of Burt Munroe, it's a favorite film of mine because I just love this idea that this unsuspecting character from New Zealand travels to the other side of the world to go for a land speed record. And can you tell us about this story of Burt Munroe, a Kiwi from Invercargill?
Well, this movie really started out as a documentary that I made back in the early 1970s. I had a partner, Mike Smith, who was also into motorcycling, and we'd heard about this guy, Burt Munroe, who lived down in Invercargill, and there was a rumour that he'd set a land speed record on this bike. Anyway, we tracked him down, we wrote letters to him, and he invited us to come down and see him and interview him, which we did. And as a part of doing that documentary, we went with him to America, these two young guys and Burt Munroe, and we went on this road trip to the Bonneville Salt Flats where he ran his bike for the last time. And this character, I couldn't let him go. You know, he was just such a charismatic, happy-go-lucky, the glass is half full sort of guy. He just seemed to me like his story and the way the people in America had helped him and the people at home in New Zealand had also helped him, the way people had got behind this guy and just helped him get where he wanted to go was quite extraordinary. And so back in 1979, after I'd made one feature film, I started writing a script about Burt Munroe. Anyway, cut to 2005, I'm still writing this script, and finally I got to make this movie about him.
What an incredible...
It was really, I guess, the one of the reasons the movie works. It's like the ultimate fish out of water story, It's this naive guy on the road, not even quite knowing where he's going, and everybody sort of helping him get there. And you got to see the movie to see how it ends, but it's a pretty good end.
Roger, I want to jump to your first feature film.
I had the good fortune of meeting Bob Harvey. He had this advertising agency called McCarman's. And Bob, bless his heart, put his money where his mouth is and, gave me work, as well as financing some of my early films. He gave me... it was his idea to make Smith's Dream, the book, into Sleeping Dogs.
Wow.
Back in about 1974, I met Ian Mune, who was a writer and a director and a stage actor, together with my buddy Dave Mitchell, who died last week.
I'm sorry to hear that.
God bless his soul, lovely guy.
Yeah.
I'll miss him terribly. I do miss him terribly.
Yeah.
We made a film called Derek, which was the first dramatic film that I was involved with, and it was about a guy who was his last day at work. He'd been fired, but everybody's pretending he's leaving voluntarily, and they're having a pathetic little going away party for him, and he's getting drunk and making a fool of himself and trying to make a move on the secretary from work, and it's just a pathetic story of this individual making a complete dick of himself. Anyway, the film was it was a bit risque, and there was a local morals campaigner called Patricia Bartlett who took a particular dislike to this film and the moral integrity of the film, and wrote nasty letters to the paper about it, and that was the beginnings of nothing could have been better publicity for us. So that was our first sort of little success, but we used the success of that to go on and raise the money to make another short half-hour film of a Catherine Mansfield short story called The Woman at the Store.
Such a prolific writer, Catherine Mansfield.
She was.
Yeah.
And we made this little film, and this film was, looked pretty classy. And we raised the money from that one film to make another 6 short films of New Zealand well-known short story writers.
Were you hooked at that point? Like once you were in,
at
that point, you were
really
done?
What I was doing was making commercials to make a living, but I was desperate to be making, dramatic films, so I would...
And you were so young, Roger. You were like mid-20s or something, right?
I was pretty young.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever think about that? Like how much responsibility you had so quickly?
Well, I was always thought I was sort of better than I was, maybe.
Well, but didn't you have to have that kind of attitude?
No, that's the wrong way of putting it. I was very...
Confident
that I... Not out of arrogance, I don't think, just confident that nobody else was doing it, so why couldn't I?
Yeah.
And I knew
But you have to have that edge, don't you think?
No, and I was prepared to put my own money into these projects, and
Which is the biggest no-no ever, Roger,
No,
right? Like everybody tells you, don't ever do that.
Never spend your own money on your own movie.
Right.
But for me, it did work out well because I wouldn't have made these films unless that's what happened, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, these 7 films we marketed under, Ian and I, we took them to the Cannes Film Festival and we marketed them under the title Winners and Losers. And the first people that bought them were, I think there were some buyers from the Scandinavian countries. I think Denmark was the first one to buy them. And all of the Scandinavian countries bought these films, and then they told other people anyway. Out of going to Cannes, we sold it, I think, to something like 52 countries. I mean, just about everywhere our television bought these films from New Zealand.
Did you make any money, Roger?
No, but we did get our money back.
Yeah, and your name was getting out there.
And everything was, looking up. I mean, but I remember the night we made these first sales of our films, Ian and I went out and got on the Croisette there in Cannes, and we got completely pissed. And we're staggering back, and we run into these lady buyers from Scandinavia, and one of them, I remember, goes, winners and losers. Tonight I think you are losers. There was definitely a sort of groundswell of interest. I mean, our selling, how we sold the concept of getting involved in these films was that New Zealand needed to establish its own cultural identity, and that these films would represent that cultural identity, and we would have actors who are New Zealand actors in them, that everything didn't have to sound like you were from America or England. But it was a big breakthrough for television to have that sort of programming on it.
Absolutely, and Sleeping Dogs was such a big breakthrough too, because you also went with an untested actor by the name of Sam Neill.
Well, an untested actor plus an untested director,
Yeah, I mean, and
well, Sam, I saw Sam. He made, I don't even know what the name of it was, but
he was making documentaries, wasn't he?
He was a film director himself, making documentaries for the National Film Unit, and he'd been in a film that Barry Barclay had made, where Sam played a priest, and he was really good. I saw this film, and I thought it was a documentary. It wasn't a documentary. He wasn't a priest. He was pretending to be a priest. And I was like, wow.
This guy's got something.
This guy looks great. He's a great actor. And so anyway,
handsome.
And I tracked him down, and Sam was in the movie. And then I wanted Jack Nicholson also to be in the film to play this role of the American.
Are you serious? Did you try to get him?
So we found out the name of his agent. Anyway, this guy, I'm sure he only took the call because it was from New Zealand. I mean, how many calls were from New Zealand would there be in a day? So anyway, he takes the call, and I go like, well, I'm Roger Donaldson from New Zealand, and I'm producing this film, and we want Jack to be in our film. And the guy goes, I remember, he goes, Jack, you want Jack Nicholson, do you, to come to New Zealand to be in your film? And he says, how much money have you got for Jack? And we go, and I go, God, I think we could get, I don't know how much we got on. We go, we could come up with $5,000. He goes, Roger, I don't think Jack's going to be coming. He said, $5,000. But he said, I've got another client who loves fishing, Warren Oates. He said he loves fishing, and I hear there's great fishing in New Zealand. And maybe Warren would come to New Zealand if you organise him some, a couple of airfares for him and his girlfriend and some fishing lines. So that's how Warren came. I don't know how much we paid him. It wouldn't have been more than $5,000 because we had to give him first-class airfares for him and his girlfriend and send him off fishing. But
Roger, this seems to be a pattern in your career. Like you're constantly to make things happen. You have had to do some pretty crazy things. You just said,
you have to. I mean, these are a couple of the high points of the crazy things you have to do to get a movie made.
Right.
When we were going to make the film Smash Palace, which was the next feature I did.
Yeah. Which is really a pivotal film for you in terms of legitimizing you as a director.
You're right, and one that I'm very proud of, and I wrote it and produced. But I remember.
Is there anything you didn't do? You didn't act in it, did you, Roger?
No.
No. Okay.
But part of the plot of how we were going to do this film was that I was going to sponsor this race car in the New Zealand race car series, and that we would film these races, and that would become the character in the movie. And so we come to the day that we're going to, we've arranged that we're going to make a press, have a PR function, and we're going to release the car and show the car. And I thought by then we'd have all of our money, guaranteed to make the film. We had none, except my money, And I thought,
once again, you're putting your own money in your project.
We could shoot for a week on the money that I'm going to put into it.
Does the crew and everybody know that?
No, nobody knows this. So I ring up everybody who's showed interest in it, and I'm trying to get them. And I think, if anybody's can be in it, they'll be in it. So I ring each one of them up, I think it was another 3 or 4 entities, and I go like, listen, everybody else has put their money in, but you haven't put yours in yet. If you put your money in, this is a go movie. And I was like, somehow they all came across, because I didn't want to disappoint the other ones who hadn't put their money in yet. Anyway, they all did come across.
Amazing film, Roger. I mean, really amazing film.
Another one of those crazy moments that you do to try and get your film out there in front of an audience. Ian and I, we went to, I think we went to the Cannes Film Festival with Sleeping Dogs, and we had it in a 4-plex. I still remember there was like, they had the marquee with the names of the 4 movies that were on and the name of the cinema number that they were in. Our first screening's got about 6 people at it. And we thought, well, that's not very good. 6 people, you need more than 6 people to show up, Even if they're all buyers, you're in trouble, So there was another movie in the theatre next door that had a full house. So Ian and I, we got a ladder in the middle of the night, and we got up and we changed the numbers on the theatres. So the next day, we got a full house. And everybody, the movie starts and it's not the movie they're expecting, but,
it's good.
Most of them stayed because, you're not going to.
What are you going to do?
Everyone assumed that they'd walked out, got into the wrong theatre, and they're like, well, it's a full house, it must be a good movie, Anyway, most people stayed, and from that day on, we had full houses.
Roger, can you be sued for this at this late stage? Past the statutes of limitations?
Probably somebody did wonder what happened to their audience the next day.
Like, what the hell? We did so well last night.
All Fair and Love and War movies.
And they've all gone. So Smash Palace, which you did everything for. I mean, you wrote it, directed it, produced it, and then this film... And sold it. This film really...
It did. That
changes your life.
And I didn't really expect or understand how much it would change my life, but I took the film it was in the market at Cannes.
And you're already, you're just still a young fella. You're not even 30, right?
True.
And there you are, and you're in the hunt. I mean, people are like, here's this young director from New Zealand.
Well, I think that's, that was what, people loved the movie. The American film critics really did pick up on it. These American critics sort of spread the word that there was this, good movie from New Zealand, and it became the sort of darling of the festival, really. And from that point on, my life became very different, and I had lots of opportunities to go to America and make films.
Was that the biggest pivotal career turn?
It was. I wanted to make dramatic films. And so I had this option, a possibility of being able to come to the States and make films. And the first, there was a guy called Harry Ufland who... said he wanted to represent me, and he represented Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro. He took me on as a client.
Can you believe it? I mean, when somebody looks you in the eye and says, "Oh, I'd like to represent you," and who this person is.
Exactly, and they would had me down to New Zealand, call in the middle of the night because they'd forgotten the time difference. Along comes Ed Pressman, who made some great movies. Badlands, I think, was one of his most famous films. That Warren Oates was in, by the way, and Sissy Spacek.
Coincidentally, yeah.
Ed says, I'm doing a sequel to Conan the Barbarian, and I love your movie Smash Palace, and I want you to write it and direct it. So Conan, the sequel to Conan.
Which is, again, you must be like...
Well, it wasn't exactly how I imagined my career going, but I was unemployed and it was a movie, so if you need work, you need work. So I said yes. And I got Ian Mune over, and together we wrote the sequel to Conan. And we just got to the end of writing this script, and Dino De Laurentiis bought the rights of Conan off Ed. And I go to a meeting with Dino, and Dino holds up this script and says, "Oh, why you want to make this a movie? 270 pages long. You've written this script, it's 270 pages long." And I go, "What? It's not 200, it's 140 or something." Give me a look, and it's all in Italian. He's had it translated into Italian, and it's 270 pages long. So I'm sort of, I'm like, I realise this is not going anywhere. And I knew that they had built down in New Zealand a replica of the Bounty up in Whangarei. It was sitting there, and I don't know for what reason they hadn't taken delivery of it. And I don't know what even made me say. I said, "What are you doing with the Bounty?" And he goes, "Why? Why you ask?" And I go, "Oh, well, I just know it's sitting down there in New Zealand, and you're ever going to make that movie?" Anyway, the phone next morning at about 5 a.m, It's in the middle of winter, I remember, and it was dark. And I pick up the phone. I got the phone round the wrong way. And I hear a voice going in the sort of, not where I expect to hear it, but down here. So I go, Donald. I go, oh, he's not here. It turns out it's Dino, demanding that I get up immediately and come immediately to his bungalow at the Beverly Hills Hotel for a meeting with him. And I think, well, he doesn't tell me about what or anything, but, maybe he's changed his mind about Conan or something. So I go over to the Beverly Hills Hotel, and Dino goes, I don't think you make Conan. I think you make The Bounty. I say, I thought David Lean was doing The Bounty for you. And he goes, no, he's gone. We parted company a few months ago, and I need a director, and I reckon you're the guy. And I go, so he says, will you do it? And I go, well, I haven't read the script, Dino. And he goes like, oh, want to read the script? Oh, yeah, I want to read the script. So he says, I'll tell you what, I'm on a plane to Mexico to see to the set of Dune that he was shooting down in Mexico. And he said, you call me on this phone and tell me if you'll do The Bounty or not. So, of course, the truth was I didn't really have to read the script because I knew I had to do it. I had no options, and it was written by Robert Bolt, and it was, obviously a
And David Lean was going to do it. I mean, God,
so
if he was going to do
bad.
it. But, yeah.
So anyway, I reluctantly say, yes, I'll do it,
Unbelievable, Roger. What a crazy story. And then at that point, did you know who the cast was?
Well, there was no cast at that point.
No cast.
Actually, that's not true. Anthony Hopkins was in place. Nobody else.
So Anthony Hopkins is going to be in your movie.
Yeah.
And then there was Daniel Day-Lewis.
All of those people were cast once I was on board.
Mel Gibson, Liam Neeson.
We got a fantastic cast of people. I mean, one thing that Dino had was, people would take his phone calls. People would take his phone calls.
For you, as a young director, what was it like working with Anthony Hopkins? Did he accept you straight away, or how did that go?
First of all, I think he thought he was going to be in a movie that was going to be directed by David Lean.
Right.
He'd been attached to the movie for a long time. Tony and I couldn't claim we got on like a house on fire. We were ready to kill each other. I think is probably a more accurate description.
Why?
Well, looking back on it, I think the character of William Bligh was a very, challenging role to do, and Tony becomes the characters that he plays in the films. I mean, one day I remember on the set, Tony's looking really upset and distressed and looks like he's ready to kill me. And I go, Tony, it's just a movie. I go, what's wrong? What's wrong? He goes, Roger, you think I'm crazy, don't you? And I go, no, Tony, I don't think you're crazy. I just think you're taking it a bit serious today. And he goes, well, you should have seen me when I played Hitler. And at that point I realised, Tony is he's such a committed actor. He really does become these parts he plays. And the character of Bligh was a very, that's why he's so good in the movie. But he didn't turn it off between takes. And I had not enough experience to understand that what he was doing was just being Bligh and character.
He was getting in it.
Yeah. And I was one of the crew.
And things were probably sketchy enough at that stage. You probably never thought you'd be making The World's Fastest Indian with him decades later.
No.
But you did.
We did.
And he mastered that New Zealand accent like I've never seen a foreigner master a New Zealand
accent.
accent.
New Zealand Invercargill accent.
Which is a whole other thing again.
He would listen to my documentary about Burt, and he would just recite Burt's lines out of my documentary and
over and over
every morning.
Roger, I want to talk about 2000 when you did 13 Days. Because that was also a bit of a pivotal moment in your career, and some big actors.
What I liked about 13 Days was that I remember very clearly what happened, when the Americans and the Russians were sort of coming to blows over the missiles that had been taken to Cuba back in the 1960s. And I remember, in fact, I kept a diary, and there was a page in my diary about basically, what's going to happen today, is there going to be a world tomorrow sort of thing. So anyway, I was, interested in this area of world politics. And so when I was, and it came to me sort of through, basically a chance breakfast. Alan Scott, who'd written Dante's Peak, had a breakfast, and he's, there was a guy there whose father was the key to the story that Kevin Costner played. And Kevin O'Donnell was there at breakfast, and we were talking about just what was going on, and he said they're making a film about my father, Kenny O'Donnell. And Kenny O'Donnell was the right-hand man of the Kennedys in the Kennedy White House, when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened. Anyway, cut a long story short, I met with Armin Bernstein, who was the producer, and I got hired as the director of 13 Days, and it was an incredibly challenging movie to make because of its scale, but it was probably one of the most exciting and, ambitious films that I've ever been involved in because of the scale of it.
The pressure, Roger, of making a film like that, because that was meant to be the biggest, that was the big blockbuster of the year, right? That film was hailed as, this is the big one. And you're not just making a big film, but you're also telling a piece of American history. An Australian
the great thing about
Ballarat.
that film is that it's had legs. My kids have to watch this film in high school now.
Really?
Yeah, it's in the high school syllabus. Watching this film as a discussion about the Cuban Missile Crisis and that part of American history.
Your kids proud of you as a director?
They're probably embarrassed when people say, "Is that your dad who made that film?" My oldest son, Aaron, he never told any of his friends that his dad made movies, and he was at medical school, and he's sitting around. This was a story that came to me at his wedding. His best friend, I'm at the table, and he says, "We didn't know you made movies, but we were watching Cocktail one day, and Aaron says, that's me in there in that bar scene there." And they go like, yeah, sure. Yeah. And they says, "Stop the tape, wind it back and have a look." Sure enough, it's Aaron at the bar. And they go, "How the hell are you doing in Jamaica in Cocktail?" And he has to confess that his father made it.
Tom Cruise, you worked with Tom.
Yeah.
And, he was in his heyday then, right? Because he'd just come off.
Well, I think he's still in his heyday. I mean, he's such
one of
a
those guys.
hard-working, ambitious, talented, maverick, he masters whatever he's going to do.
So when he turns up to work, they say he's just ready to
When
go.
he turned up to be a barman, he was a barman.
And all those stunts and everything, they were his.
He did them all.
It seems to me, just looking at all the different characters in all your films, you really identify with the characters in the film, who those people represent. Burt Munroe, and then most recently, Bruce McLaren. Again, for those who haven't seen McLaren, wow. People know the name McLaren, but they don't necessarily know McLaren was this New Zealand race car driver.
No.
And that was the thing that really, that I really noticed. It's just the idea that Bruce achieved so much at such a young age. At 32, it makes you wonder what he would have done if he doubled his age.
No. I mean,
if he'd been 64.
That's the tragedy of it, really.
It's terribly tragic. But you love these characters. Do you see yourself in them? Do you want to be them? What do you think that is?
I love telling their stories is really what I do. I mean, I see myself as a storyteller. I love, when I was a kid, I used to like to write stories. I used to like to make up stories. I can, even remember my little own daydreams of, one of my earliest memories is I wanted a swimming pool. And my mother, I remember saying, "If you want a swimming pool, you've got to make yourself one." And I remember digging a hole in the back garden and filling it with water. And of course it was black water, and I still can remember all the sticks floating on top. And I was like, I didn't mind the black water, but the sticks floating on my swimming pool, I wasn't.
So you've always been a dreamer.
So I was a bit of a, schemer and a dreamer.
I love this quote from you. If people were scared of consequences, nothing would go forward. Risk-taking should be a major element of anybody's life. The risk I took is that things might not work out, and it might be a complete failure, and that my movies might not be popular with people. But then if you're a race car driver and you fuck up, you're in much bigger trouble.
You're in bigger trouble, much bigger trouble. No, I mean, I see myself as a risk taker sort of emotionally, but not a risk taker, physically. I think people who do really dangerous things, I think everybody has a sort of a begrudging respect for people who really do crazy, dangerous things, because we all know how precious our lives are, and somebody who is prepared to flaunt that relationship between life and death at the absolute limit of what's possible, I think everybody has a begrudging respect for them, because ultimately we're all heading in the same direction anyway.
But there's something about all of this that you find infectious. One of my favorite quotes is, "Luck is the residue of design." You have taken so many risks and and people could say, oh, well, he's lucky because this happened and that happened. But no, it's because you've put yourself out there. You've taken risks.
My philosophy is a bit like you got to get lucky, but you got to work hard to get lucky.
Right. And then the biggest risk in life is not taking one.
That's as good as it gets, that advice.
Absolutely. And now it makes me wonder, you've got still so much passion, you've got such a body of work behind you. Does it become more and more difficult to make choices about what's ahead of you because you've got that body of work behind you?
Well, you look at the numbers and you realize you can't keep making movies forever. On the other hand, I feel more passionate about what I do now than I've ever done, really.
So what are you going to do with that passion now, Roger?
Try and find some stupid bastard who'll give me some money and I can get out and make these fucking movies.
Roger, I got a couple of questions for you. Can you?
I thought you'd had a couple already, mate.
Just 3 more then, I should say.
Shit's getting bloody hard.
All right, we're done. Roger, last time you laughed so hard that you cried, can you remember? I've seen you laugh and cry a few times.
We've had some good dinners, you and me and some of our mates, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. Really good
Well, you've
dinners.
got a great sense of humour and you've always... I think you do your accent is as good as it gets. Give us a little bit of Bajan.
You want me to finish off with the Jamaican and ask you the question, Roger?
In Bajan, yeah.
All right. I want to ask you a question. If you were going to take a road trip across America and you could take 3 people, when I say 3 people, I mean 3 people, on a road trip across America, anybody from any time in history in the car with you driving across America.
You know what? Here's 3 people that I'd love to do a road trip with. A couple of my sons and you. That'd be a good experience.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd definitely do some scheming.
Yeah, I think so. I think that might get a little dangerous. So, Roger, we all have an expiration date. And if you knew that tomorrow was your last day on Earth, what would you do with it?
Well, it'd be a bit hard to achieve, but if I could, I would get my family around me. They're all over the world. My old mum's in Australia. I've got a son in London. I've got a daughter in New York. I've got a son in Brisbane, kids in New Zealand here. I'd get them all around me if I had that, if I was lucky enough to be able to get them all together.
Roger, thanks for taking the time to talk to me, and I'm pretty excited to see what you might be doing next. I have a feeling it's going to be filled with passion and vigor. And
That's the hope.
If anybody has some cash they want to throw Roger's way.
Have I got scripts for you?
This guy's got 20 scripts in the drawers ready to go. Will you give him a producer credit, Roger?
You can have a producer credit.
You can have a producer credit?
And you can have the rest of the champagne.
Cheers,
I'm
mate.
not joking. This is champagne in here, mate.
No,
Did you
no.
realise?
Yeah, no. Loose lips sink ships.
Loose lips tell the stories.
That's right.
That's a bit under the table, that.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
a pest and tell it, and then ask you to tell the truth.
we're just warming up. The truth serum. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Phil.
If you have a really cool story that you want to share with us, then why not share it? Maybe you'll become my next guest. Don't forget, you can watch this podcast online at philkeoghan.com.